Um, Hello, everybody. First of all, can everybody see my slide? Meaning the one that says paper maps on it. Okay. All right. I'm trying Keynote here instead of PowerPoint, and there's some quirks in there that I don't quite get. So bear with me here. I'm hoping this is going to go well, but we will see. Well, hey, everybody. It's another Monday, and so it's another QSS navigation seminar. I hope you guys are doing well and had a great weekend. Today you only have to deal with me because I'm actually the presenter, and I want to tell you a little bit about paper maps, pros and cons, what's available for you, what to pay attention to, what you can buy, what you can get for free. Also, a little bit about the USGS Topo Map, which is sort of the classic topography map that's available for free and that a lot of people use and a lot of applications also have available. If you, for instance, subscribe to CalTopo or Gaia, you probably have seen those maps. What this isn't is like an in-depth review of how to read maps and navigate with Compass. We have classes for that. And hopefully they will start up in the fall, and you can go to one of those. We might have one as part of that seminar too, if it doesn't conflict with those classes, and if we think we need more opportunity for members to practice and to learn it. But we'll have to see how that goes. And also it would be nice to actually go outside and then do stuff with a map outside rather than just me showing you some slides and it's like, this is how you read distances and this is how you put the compass on a map. It's harder to do on a slide deck. So stay tuned for that. That will come. We already offer it. We just need to get back to getting outside and having classes. But we might also do something here, at least something that we can do at the CMC Center. In Golden, where I can walk around and talk to folks and look at their maps and see how they're doing and what they're doing. With that said, this is basically an overview of why you want to have paper maps with you, what they can do for you, what's available, and what that USGS Topo Map is and what the functionality is, because they added some cool stuff to the USGS Topo Maps over the last decade that I want to show you. All right, with that said, before we get started, I want to thank Maddie Miller and Robbie Monsma, who helped me put on those talks. Thanks so much. Without them, that would not be possible. And in terms of what's coming up, we have a couple of talks in the works, and they're not online yet, but we certainly will have a talk about Garmin, the second part. If you've attended the first Garmin talk last week, this is going to be a second part that talks about how to get the data off your device, how to work with Garmin software called Basecamp. So for those of you who have a Garmin device, that might be useful. So that's coming up, I think, in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks probably. And then in 1 or 2 weeks, we'll also have Robbie talk about some stuff that's related to mapping the Front Range, I believe. So stay tuned for that. But as of now, there's nothing set for next week. We might do an off week next Monday, and then get back to the regular schedule beginning in 2 weeks. If you guys have any topics that you're interested in that you want to hear more about, please let me know. You can write me an email if you'd like, or just put it in the chat if you like. Although email is probably better because that I'll have in my inbox. And also, even more importantly, if you have anybody or you yourself would like to give a seminar, please let me know. That's sort of the limiting factor here. I have some topics in my head, but I can't do them all by myself, and I don't have the time for them, for preparing all this stuff. And you do need some time to prepare those slides. So if you have anybody that you know that does stuff that would fit in the framework of navigation and is willing to help me out here and maybe wants to present any topic that has to do with navigation or trip planning for that matter, yeah, let me know. I would be interested to talk to that person and maybe, hopefully, set something up. All right, with that said, let's start out with paper maps, USGS Topo Maps and other offerings, as I title it here. I could have also called it Topo Maps or paper maps, why you need them. So let's get right into it. In terms of what we're doing, I've already mentioned some of that. We want to talk about the pros and cons. We want to talk about why you want to have the paper maps, what's available for you, and then we focus in a little bit on the USGS topographic map. And at the end, I want to have time for questions and answers and discussion points. I'm not a cartography authority on this topic. I've used maps, or I'm using maps extensively as a geologist. So I'm looking at contour maps and contour lines all the time. And I love maps, but I'm not a cartographer. So I don't know everything that has to do with maps or paper maps in general. So if you know anything that either I misrepresented or I missed, or that you think is important and I haven't mentioned, feel free to add that to the chat. I'll see if I can monitor that during the talk. If not, I'll definitely look at it. We'll look at it together afterwards in terms of getting questions answered. But any comments are welcome. Any discussions are welcome. If you want to share something with a group, feel free to do so in the chat. And I hope I don't misrepresent stuff, but it's certainly not complete. I started putting those slides together and, you know, could have spent another week putting some additional information together, but I had to cut it off at some point. So yeah, if you think there's something useful that I haven't mentioned, please put it in the chat box. All right, with that said, what does Mike have in his backpack? Let's start with that. So I have a Garmin in my backpack usually. If I'm going to North Table Mountain, I probably don't have a Garmin in my backpack because I probably already have that track. Plus, it's, you know, it's right in the Front Range. But as soon as I go somewhere where I haven't been, or if I do off trail, I do have that with me. I have my phone with me, and in the past, I have not used any apps on my phone up until like about half a year ago. I still had an iPhone 6, and that would basically crap out after half a day of battery usage. So I never felt comfortable. I have a new one now, and that actually holds charge very well. So I'm starting to use that and put, like, you know, I have co-tracks on it, Cal Topo, and see how that goes. I obviously have a compass with me because it's one of the 10 essentials. But one thing I always have with me and will always use more than any other device on that screen are paper maps. And in order to do that, I'll put it in my side pocket in my pants. Because if I have it in my backpack, I'll never look at it. And I put two maps on here because I have two maps with me. I have one map with me that shows me the trail and basically nothing else on a letter size printout, so that it's really zoomed in so I can see exactly where I am. And then I usually have a bigger map with me, and that could be a paper map like National Geographic's that shows me the surrounding area. For instance, if you get lost, or if you just want to know what the certain peak is, that's always helpful to get sort of like the context view of where you are. And you might find some stuff that you want to go, or you want to go on your next trip. There's always something to discover on those maps. So that's what I have with me. Paper maps are literally the most important thing. For me, it's really like the map on the upper left. X marks the spot. It's a treasure hunt for me. I'm like a 10-year-old kid when I have a paper map with me. I get all excited when I know that in half a mile there's a trail junction, and then in half a mile I actually hit the trail junction. It's great. So I love to navigate by paper map because you always find something new. Plus, it also allows you to get to know your surrounding much better than if you look at the screen and it says, "Oh, you are here," and that's all you need to know. So, but I'll talk about that actually I'll talk about that now. Why do you want to have a paper map with you? Well, reliability is one issue. It's more reliable than electronics if you treat it right, and we'll get to that in a minute. It doesn't run out of battery. It works in cold weather. Most of the maps work when they get wet, depending on what paper it is. So it really won't let you down unless you throw it down a cliff, obviously, and can't get it anymore. Its ease of use, all maps kind of work the same way. They have different color schemes. They have different information plotted, but contour lines, once you understand how to read a map, how to read a contour line, how to gauge distances based on the scale your maps in, you're good to go for whatever map you're looking at. From any vendor you get a map from, they all work the same way. So there's no software to learn, there's no updates to install, there's no map to download before you go, because you don't have cell reception and you need the map on your phone or on your GPS device. So that's a big advantage that you have. I mentioned that the third one and the fourth one already, regional context. A map can give you a regional context. You can fold it out. You can see not just your trail area, but what's around you further in the distance. So you can get a much better feel and discover much more things when you do when you have a paper map with you, like you're going up a valley or the peaks around you. I feel, at least, it gives you a much better idea of where you are and how that fits into the greater outdoors, if you will. And that goes hand in hand with number 4. It engages your brain, because it's not somebody telling you you are here. It's actually you're finding you where you always have to see, well, where I'm going next. Do I have a stream crossing? Do I have a trail junction? Do I make a loop? Do I go left? Do I go right? And that keeps you on your feet. That, to me, is actually the most important thing of you not getting lost, because you're going to have to spend a little bit of effort. It's not much once you are able to read the map. It's actually not that much. A little bit of effort to know where you are, but then it's a lot of fun when you're figure out you're exactly where you think you are, and you probably won't get lost. Rather than if you stare at a device that tells you, oh, you're here, and then you haven't looked for it for an hour or two, or maybe it doesn't work anymore, and then you have to find your way home. Especially important when you're off trail. All right, but of course, there are some drawbacks. The dark side of paper maps. One is, for instance, that, as I mentioned, it's going to be useless if you don't know how to read it. It's really not that difficult to read maps. To be, state this at the beginning, because it's a lot of people. I teach wilderness trekking school, and a lot of people getting scared in the mapping class because they think it's a lot of math, and you have to learn a whole bunch of stuff. It feels like school for them, and it's really tough. But once you get the hang of it, and if you're not too scared, and we try to make it as easy as possible for you guys, it's really simple to read a map. If it's a map that you like the design, it gets really easy. The printed information becomes outdated after a while, so always look for that printed in 2018 or last update, because it might matter. It depends on what you're doing. If you mainly use your map to read the topography and the contour lines, you're in luck. That's based on geology, and the geology does not change over 10, 50, or 100 years. Pikes Peak was Pikes Peak 100 years ago and was the same height. So the valleys were at the same spot, the ridges were at the same spot. So I've navigated with a USGS map from 1960, and you still get where you want to get, especially if you do the off-trail stuff, because the contour lines are still good. Now, road access and trailheads might have changed, so that you might have to pay attention to. And the last portion I want to mention here is, that maintaining your map library, depending on where you go for hiking, might be costly. So if you buy, for instance, the National Geographic Trails Illustrated maps. They have a whole bunch of maps. I don't know, they probably have like 40 or 50 now for Colorado. And if you hike a lot, and you want this map for each area you're in, you'll spend quite a bit of money. And then if you want to also be up to date, you might have to rebuy some of those maps. So it can get pricey. But I found if you're having a good mix of maps you pay for and maps you download and then print out, you're good. It's not that much of a cost, but it's not for free. Electronic maps are usually well, not usually, but some of the electronic maps aren't free either. So you have to pay a subscription there too. So I think it all evens out in the end. But yes, if you want every map of your every paper map that's made in Colorado, it'll cost you a bit of money. All right, let's see what's next. Yeah, some tools that you might want to consider when you're dealing with paper maps. One's a map scale here in the upper left. This one's done by Map Tools. This is quite handy for trip planning purposes. Don't usually use that in the field, but if you're at home and you look at a big fold-out map on your dining room table and you just want to get a feel for, well, what's the distance here? You can always look at the scale, obviously, at the bottom of the map usually, but you know, if you do that a few times, you can whiplash. So I usually have the 1 to 24,000 ruler here, and I'll just put it on the map. If my map's also 1 to 24,000, that of course, and they make those rulers for different map scales, so you can get them for different scales. But 1 to 24,000 is the USGS Topo scale, the most common one. So all maps in the USGS from the USGS Topography set will work with that. So if you work with that, it's really nice. The one below it is really nice too, because it gives you an idea of the contour interval in terms of how steep terrain is. That's something I'm not really good at either. Looking at contour lines and figuring out, is that like a 5%, a 10% you know, slope? I don't know. I just look at, are they, you know, bunched together quite a bit, or are they further apart? And then I go by that. That's where an online tool like CalTopo or Gaia becomes very useful, because they actually color shade the slope angle. So that's something to have if you want to print out a map from CalTopo, for instance. So a lot of people like that. The other thing, of course, is either have a pen with you or make sure that you can read what's on the map. Some of the maps look beautiful, hard to read. Unless you have your glasses with you or a magnifying glass, like the one that's shown here. That's a simple one that's like the one that you can bend and put in your wallet, so you don't have a big weight or a big bulky item with you. And then some folks like to put their map in a bag. I have done that in the past too. I usually use a Ziploc bag and then just stuff it in my side pocket in my pants, so I have easy access to. Some people like that, the one that's shown here, where you can have the map readily visible, and you can put that on your chest, so you have always access to it. Again, if you put it in that bag and put it in your backpack, you're not going to look at it. So yeah, that's a personal preference. Of course, you can, if you have printed maps that you pay at a store, a lot of them now are waterproof and tear resistant, so you don't actually need that bag. You can just have it in your pocket and it can get wet and it won't smear or it won't rip. All right, so that's always a good thing to have, and that's most of the maps that are offered these days as a paper map are actually printed on that particular material. All right, let's see what's next. Oh yes, you still need the compass. Paper map tools, most important paper map tool, part of the 10 essentials. All right, so how do you get paper maps? Well, there's really three avenues if you want. You can print your paper map at home. You can go online and order one, or you can get an electronic copy of a map and then print it on demand at, for instance, Office Max or Staples. If you want the large scale map that your printer at home can handle. The ones that are printed professionally usually use a really good printer, so those maps are usually better than the ones that you have at home on your computer, unless you have a plotter at home in your office. But of course, they'll cost you something, so they're not free. Whereas if you download something that's a free file, you can print it, and it works it works for you, and it's free. When you print from home, a couple of things to consider. Not every software that you use is good for printing. The USGS files download as a already laid out map, basically like a full electronic version of the paper map. So all you would have to do is use Acrobat, the PDF reader, and print it. So that's not a big issue. But if you use programs such as CalTopo and Gaia, they have a special print layout menu. They spend a lot of work designing that, and you can get like the scale and the magnetic declination and some additional information at the bottom. That's something that's really useful and you need on the map, so you know what the distances are, and you can navigate with a compass if you need to. So those are good those are good software programs that help you print maps nicely. CoTrax and Garmin Basecamp are good to look at your data online, are good to have as an app in the field. The CoTrax, for instance, can track your hike very well. They don't really have a print interface. So what you get is basically a screenshot of your screen with not a lot of map elements on it, like a scale or something like that. So I would not recommend using those for that purpose. Just be aware of that when you're working with one app versus the other. Printing is always, if you want to print a lot, I would steer towards CalTopo and Gaia GPS. In terms of printing, if you print your own maps, make sure, here's my printer, I have a Canon G6000. Make sure, and this is a CalTopo map, I think, make sure you print at 100% scale. Now, this is not that critical if you do have a scale bar at the bottom, because you can always read out what the distance is there and then compare it with what's on the map above it. But if you print something out 100%, you want to print out something 100%, and that will push off those elements off the page, or they're not even on the page to begin with anyways. Then by changing your scale here, you will change the distances on the map and you might not even know it. So be a little bit careful with that when you do your own printing. There's weatherproof paper to use that's basically tear resistant and waterproof that you can use with your printer. Most of that paper, though, is for either copiers or laser printer. The reason being, of course, an inkjet printer that most of the folks have, I have one, is water-based ink, and that paper is waterproof. So you're gonna have a conflict there if you want to print on that paper. Now, some companies do offer special paper that works on some inkjet printers, they say. I have some, I think, I don't know if I have the iGauge one, but I have one that does print on that specific papers, but it makes the colors look a little bit funky compared to what I see on the screen. Excuse me. So I don't do that very often. I rather have a regular paper. I use 24 pounds paper, because if you go with a cheap 20-pound thickness, that can rip a lot. And if I have 24 pounds, it will allow me also to print something on the back if I want to, and it won't shine through it. I won't see the other side through the paper. But weatherproof paper is available. Be careful for your inkjet printer. See if it works for that particular model. But yeah, I mean, it works once you get it. If your printer works, it does work. I've tried it in the past, and those maps, you will have them for forever. They don't rip, and you don't have to replace them when you go back in a year and you can't find your map anymore, or you had to throw it out at the end of the hike because it was all dirty. Always think about readability too. You can, of course, put a map that's like 20 by 20 inches in its original scale on your letter size printer paper, because that's the only paper you have in your printer, and the printer will do that, but once you have the printout in your hand, you will not be able to read anything on it, because the text that was original 10 to 12 points, for instance, is now 2 points large. So be careful when you shrink stuff that you can still read it. Things to consider when printing online or in store. Make sure that your map's worth paying the price. I've done that in the past a couple of times if it's a map that I really like, because I either go there often or every year and I want to print it. And a lot of those stores, like the one that's here on the left, the My Topo one, you can have it printed on waterproof paper. And so if I go back a lot, if it's an area that I really love, if I live in the mountains and it's the area that I live in and I want to map because I go out hiking in the evening, for instance, by all means, that is a good investment to pay, I don't know, $15, $20 for a map like this that is waterproof. They also do laminated maps. So, your personal map from your, retreat in the mountains, if you want to have it laminated and hang it up on the wall, you can do that too if you like. Obviously, you wouldn't take the laminated one with you in the field. But it's available. The print quality is usually better if you can go to Staples or Office Max and you can look at a sample of their plotter output. That might give you an idea if you want to go that route. Yeah, I mentioned waterproof or laminated. And then also be aware that I wouldn't do that the day before you go hiking, because those folks might take a week before you get the map from them. Staples and Office Max are probably a little bit faster. My Topo will take 1 to 2 weeks. My Topo has sometimes specials where you can get the paper for free, the waterproof paper, or you get 50% off. So you can wait for that if you're looking for a specific map. I actually have one here printed from My Topo that is for the Green Mountain USGS Quadrangle. The reason I printed that is that I used to go for the grad hike for the wilderness trekking school. I used to go there every year, and instead of just printing out a new map every year, I just said, well, I'll get one, a good one, full scale, that students could borrow or use, and I'll have it forever. And I still have it. And that is like 5 or 6 years old, and there's not a smudge on it. And if there would be, I can wipe it off. All right, so that's printing online or in store. Now, a couple of things I need to discuss when we talk about paper maps and which paper maps you want to get is a couple of map elements that we all need to be on the same page on, and that is scale. Hiking topography maps come in different scales, and they come in different sizes, obviously. The scale is important because A, you want to be able to read the stuff that's on the map, and B, you want to have a map scale that your entire hike doesn't show up as a single dot on the map because it shows half of Colorado. And there are maps like this. So go back to scale for those folks who are not too familiar with that. There's small scale and large scale, and you can see that here on the lower image. Small scale means I see a lot on a map, so everything is much smaller. Small scale. It's a little bit counterintuitive because the numbers are actually higher. So if a small scale map is like this one here is 1 to 94 million, versus a large scale map is 1 to 1.3 million. So 94 sounds bigger. Why is it called small scale? Because it's 1 over 94, and that makes that number really, really tiny. So that's how I usually remember that. So small scale is if you want to see a lot of area. And large scale is when you really want to zoom in. The small scale maps are really good for trip planning. When you look in an area like the Front Range, the entire Front Range, for instance, you want to just scout out places where there's lots of trails and where there's some cool topography and some nice little towns there that you want to go, that's the one map you want to use. I wouldn't use it in the field because it's useless, because the entire hike is going to be that tiny. And the large scale maps, in contrast, are exactly the opposite. It might be just for a little area of the Front Range that includes your hike, and you can pull it out and you can look at your hike. You can still, it might be that large, so you see exactly where you are, but you still have some surrounding areas with you. Also, take a look at what map information you want on those. The topography is usually the same on every map, obviously, but there's different information on every map. Some folks put specific emphasis on bike trails or hunting areas or fishing areas or campgrounds. If you go to the National Forest trail maps, they have a lot of information about campgrounds on there and rest areas. Others place more emphasis on hiking, and they have like distance measurements on there and trailhead information and where to park. So there's different flavors, and you have to figure out what you like best by looking at the maps. All right, so let's get into some of the paper maps that are available and then you can get. And we'll start out with the free ones, and those are actually the park maps. So here on the left, you have the Jeffco park system, and Jeffco has a map for each one of those park, and they're at the trailhead, and you can get them, and they're like down here, the Lair of the Bear park map. They're really nice. That it's a special paper. It's not really waterproof, but it's not like the paper you're used to. It's a little bit shiny. It's a little bit coated, so it actually lasts longer. It's really nice paper, and the maps are actually very, very gorgeous and very well designed. I think they actually got an award for the map they're using in their map in those guides. The state parks have a map that you get at the check-in at the booth when you pay your fee. Obviously, the national parks have a map. Oh yeah, here's the state park map on the right, and then each county might have its own map set. So here on the left is the one for Larimer County. They have open space maps available, just like the Jeffco ones at the trailhead. Your county itself might have, or your city might have a trail map available. Here's the one for Arvada. I live in Arvada. They have a park and open space trail map and guide if you want to do some urban hiking, for instance. Wheat Ridge has one for Clear Creek trail map that you can get. I think I got that at the trailhead, actually. All those maps are also available online for download, and you can print it yourself on your printer. Again, the scale will be a little bit different because those fold-out maps are a little bit larger than your letter size print or your letter size format. So if you want to shrink it down to the letter size, be careful that you can still read it. And of course, the scale changes. All right, then what's available to buy? One of the most common ones is the National Geographic Trails Illustrated Map. Here on the left, you see how that looks. It has like this brownish greenish color, really, for everything. Some people like that, some people don't. It's probably the best coverage for Colorado. It has 40 to 50 maps. It has the topographic maps for certain areas. It has specific maps for 14ers and the Colorado Trail. It has now local trail areas where it takes an area that's around a local community, such as Breckenridge and Telluride, and really zooms in. It has fishing and river recreational maps. You can buy them in a collection, or you can buy them separately if you want. And they have a big wall map of Colorado too. Some of you might have that. The map scales vary from 1 to 40,000 to 1 to 63,000. So it's fairly large scale. So when you open up a map, if you navigate it with one like this trail here, the Stove Gulch Trail, it actually shows the trail that you would take. So it's not just one dot. It's a good scale to have with you in order to figure out where you are on the trail. It's waterproof and tear resistant, which is really nice. It has that shaded relief that pops out highs and lows on the map. It has some other information on it. It has the latitude, longitude, and the UTM grids on it if you want to navigate with a compass. It is updated regularly, but not like every year. So you have to see if you have a map that's 10 years old, it might be good to at least check in the store and see what's different. On the specialty maps, like the fishing and river recreational maps, it obviously has additional information on there. It's also available digitally. You can get it through Gaia, Avenza, and a program called Topo Map Plus, which I'm not familiar with. CalTopo does not have it. But if you subscribe to those other ones, you can get that for free on your, and it's really just a scan. It's not like a more updated map. They took that map and scanned it in for those programs. All right, another one that I have that I like a lot better in terms of optics is SkyTerrain. That's a small company in Boulder. They have a whole bunch of maps that you can see here. Those maps are also sort of the same scale, so they compare well with National Geographic maps. They have pretty much the same features: waterproof, trail descriptions. They have single track information on them, shaded relief, and then some access information. I like those maps in terms of the color scale. I have a much better feel for what's high, what's low, how big the relief is from those maps. They're updated too. So here Joe's Golden Evergreen First Edition. I think they're up to the 4th edition. That's a good map to have if you don't like the National Geographic, but you're limited by area because it doesn't have as many maps available as the National Geographic. And this is paper map only. You don't have a software that comes with it or that is licensed to show those maps. But really cool, and you support local business if you buy those maps. Another small company, this one is in Denver, it's called Latitude 40 Maps. This one has a little bit more variety, as you can see in the bullet points here. And you can see on the map in the lower right where it has coverage. The problem with this is that it has, for instance, one of the entire Front Range, and that is 1 to 125,000. And that's where a map like this becomes useless when you're out in the field. It's just too much stuff in too little an area. So I have the Front Range one, and I use that to plan trips, but I'm not gonna use it to navigate on the trail. So this is really cool. You can see the entire Northern Front Range. You can say, oh, let's drive over there to Fort Collins. There's a bunch of trails here, and you can see them here. But as you can see on the map, your trail that you're hiking might just be this little piece, and I think that's zoomed in. So it's hard to use that in the field because it's just not enough detail on it. But good map for planning, and again, local. All right, then you have the National Forest Service maps. Those come either online, CalTopo has them, Gaia has them. A lot of people like them because they make the contours really pop out, and they're very clean, I think. The readability is really nice. So some folks really like to have that as their layer in CalTopo when they print out a map from CalTopo. They have maps for each of the national forests areas in Colorado. And there's a lot, as you can see here in green, there's a lot in the mountains. Those maps are pretty much large scale, but that, sorry, small scale. But they're still readable because when you unfold them, they're humongous. I mean, they're like huge. Some people don't probably have the arm span to get them all open. That's where CalTopo is nice because you can just print out the section you want. All their maps are also available online through the United States Forest Service, if you'd like. Yeah, but very clean. I use them all the time because you can really nicely see the contours. All right, a couple of specialty maps. Pocket Pals Trail Maps makes a lot of maps that are specific to 14ers. And what they do is they zoom into the 14er and they show you the different routes. Now, this is, of course, all available on 14ers.com, but if you want a map when you're out there, that's nice. They're not that big. The folded maps like this, and if you unfold it, it's probably like that. Also waterproof and tear resistant, really nice. They, of course, they are cheaper because they're, you know, showing less and they're smaller. That company's in Colorado Springs. So for the Colorado Springs area, they have a whole bunch of additional maps for the state parks in the area, like Cheyenne Mountain, Miller, going up to Roxborough. And they have a 14 map set for the Colorado Spring area itself, with wilderness areas, each having their little own map. It's really nice. It's very minimalist, as you can see here on the left, but that makes it all very clear. And if you're, you know, you're doing grays every year, but you want to do it from different angles, that might be a nice map to have. So very nice maps for that particular purpose. Along the same lines, there's Outdoor Trails maps. All of those maps, by the way, are also available at REI. This is a little bit larger. The map's a little bit larger when you unfold it, and so it usually catches areas of 14ers. So here for instance, you have the 14er series map 1 of 16 down here in the middle, center middle, and it has Bierstadt, Evans, Grays, and Torreys on it. But the scale is still large enough so that you can actually see the trails. And their map's also very nice and clean. They have a little bit more information than just the trails to the peaks, but they're focused on the peak areas. So that's a nice map to have if you want to do, you know, on a weekend 2 or 3, for instance, and you only want to have 2 or 3 14ers, and you only want to have one map with you. That's a good one to have. Also, it's not as expensive as the National Geographic maps because it's a small area. Well, then you finally have the USGS Topo Maps, and those are available to you for free. But you can also order it through the USGS store, and they usually run $15 if you do. Now, be prepared though, if you do that through the store, and if it's not like an old vintage historic map, if it's the newest updated one, what they do is they take the electronic file and print it on their plotter and send it to you. So if you get it cheaper, you can just download that electronic file, go to your Staples or whatever you prefer, and print it there, and you might get it for $10 that way. And they started doing that in 2009 when they switched to electronic maps only. But they still have some of the old maps in stock. And if you get one that's original, that was printed originally on paper, that paper quality is actually much better than any plotter I've seen today. It's done really by a professional mapping company. The paper it's still paper, it's not waterproof, so be careful. But the paper is thin, but really sturdy, and the colors really pop. And you might not get that with a plotter from a big office store. You can download all the maps for the US if you want, and that's about 60,500 maps, and it will cost you almost 2 terabytes of space on your computer. If you include all the non-current one from since 2009, that's another 2.4 terabytes. And of course, if you want to download all the historic ones that go back to 1890, you have another, those are all scanned, you have another 2 terabytes. But technically you can, and USGS actually has it set up so that you can batch download stuff if you want. So if you really want all of the quad maps, all the 7.5 minute maps from Colorado that are 1 to 24,000 scale, and they are shown here in the lower right, you can do that, but it'll take a while and it costs a lot of space. So let's look a little bit in more detail in those maps. And let's look at the history first. That mapping program was started by the U.S. Geologic Survey, USGS, that's what it stands for, in 1884. And a big part of that was John Wesley Powell. You can read the quote there on top, who was instrumental in initiating that. Now, in 1947, the 7.5 minute maps, and those are the maps that are 1 to 24 scale. That's the one that I have hanging here behind me in my office. Those are the the maps that you can get through Gaia and you can get through CalTopo online, and you can order as well through USGS. Those are the maps. So those were initiated in 47 for the entire nation, with the exception of Alaska. Alaska took longer. And those were, of course, paper maps. And then in 2009, they switched to a PDF version of the map, but it's not a regular PDF, it's a Chia PDF. And if we have time later, I'll show you what that means. But it has navigation information included in the PDF. But from 2009 on, all the maps are now available electronically by default. And if you want a printed map, the USGS will print that electronic map on their plotter and it'll send it to you. But they don't have a stack of printed maps that they commissioned, like 1,000 by a map company, and that they hand out or give out. So that's how that works. In terms of topography map, we've talked about the 7.5 minute one, which is the most useful for hiking. You have other scales. You have the 1 by 2 degree series that covers a larger area. You have the 30 by 60 minute, and you have the county maps scale, which is even more detailed. But the most detailed topographic map that the USGS makes are those 7.5 minute maps, and they're called 7.5 minutes because that's the area it covers in degrees. So it covers 7.5 minutes out of 60 minutes, 1 degree of a certain area in Colorado. Now, they also make 15 by 15 minutes, and that's missing here. I couldn't find a picture there, but you can get different scales. The one that's regularly updated is this 7.5 minute map. The other ones are not regularly updated or not even updated at all anymore. But those 7.5 minute maps are still being updated. And you can imagine if you have just for Colorado 1,800 maps to go to periodically to update, that's quite some work. So they have a team to do that. Your taxpayers' dollars at work, so to speak. Here on the left, you see how that map looks like when you get it printed out. I'm not going to go through all those elements because that's overkill for us today. But usually the ones that are now issued are 24 inches by 29 inches. If you want to print it on a letter size image, you cannot read anything that's on a map anymore. So you either just need to print out portions of it if you like, or you get yourself a poster printout, either online or at the Office Max. It's a nice scale because 1 inch is 2,000 feet, and so you see where you walk here on that map. It's not just a little dot for your entire day of hiking. It has info here in number 2, info about adjacent maps. So if your trail goes outside that map and goes into the next one, you know exactly down here what other quadrangle map to look at. You have some info about the data. That's important if you want to check how old is the road information on this map, because the map might be from 1974, but the road information on that map is from 1964. So you want to make sure that that's all up to date. And it has the magnetic declination on it down here. Now, the only reason I mentioned this is because if you get a map from 1974 or even a map from 2009, the magnetic declination that's printed on there is most certainly not the one that you have today. So if you map with a compass, you want to look up for that area what the declination is, because your compass map, you need that in order to navigate for your compass without going into details here. Usually what it says on here when you zoom in is it says when that picture was created, so oh, this was created in 2009 or 1974, so I should disregard it and just look it up. Yeah, here's the blow up here. Magnetic north is usually not the map north, which is just up. But that's a whole class for another time. I just want to mention that because that's important when you print one of those maps out. Where do you get those USGS maps? Well, there's different ways to get them. You can get the paper maps through the USGS store. Click on maps, and then they have a 7.5 minute link to those maps, and then you can zoom into the area you want the map, and you can specify what map you want, and then it allows you to order it. Now, there's also something called the National Map website, and I think we have time. I'll get to those. I have those links up, and I'll show you. the National Map website. The links are down here on the left, and I'll make this PowerPoint available so you can check the links if you want. Digital versions available through the National Map or through the Historic Map Collection. If you've ever looked at the USGS map sites, there's like 5 different ways to get some information because they have all those legacy web pages still around that nobody deactivated it, but nobody updates anymore. So it can be quite confusing. Those links should work though. And you can get them, when you get them online, you can get them in different formats: in PDF, a GeoTIFF, a JPEG, and a KML. I think it's a KMZ, that's wrong, it's not a KML. PDF's really nice for printing, and it has some navigation information for you. GeoTIFF is if you want to import this into a navigation or GIS program, Geographic Information System software like ArcGIS, you would use the GeoTIFF. It's basically an image, not a PDF, but an image like a TIFF that has all the projection information in it so that the program knows how to plot it. But that's advanced. If you just want a little JPEG that you can either print or display, you have the option too. That's much, much smaller size, but it doesn't have the same print quality as the PDF. And then the KMZ file is if you want to load it into Google Earth and you want to look at it in there. Now, a word about the GeoPDF, because that's really cool. So this is the file you get from the USGS, and then you either send it off, you either plot it on your printer at home, or you send it off to Staples, for instance, and they print it out in 22 by 29. But what you can do at home is, it comes now with layers. So all those layers you can activate and deactivate, and let me show you this in my software here real quick. So I hope you guys can still see the screen. So this is the one for Mount Evans, so it has Bierstadt on it. This is our Acrobat, or the reader. So what you can do is, you have an icon here on the left that is like a layers icon. If you go there, you can click on those arrows and it will expand stuff. And those are the different layers that are on that image. So if you, for instance, don't want to see the terrain, you can deactivate that. Now you can send it like this now to the Staples printer, or you can print it at home that way. If you don't like the contour lines, you can add the image in the background and take a look at that. And then of course you can go and you can zoom in to the full scale and you can see this a little bit better. You can remove the geographic names if you'd like. You can remove structures. You can remove all the roads. It's all now layered because all those data sets are digital and they're overlaid to each other. In addition to that, you also have 2 attachment files that you can access by clicking on the paperclip. One is basically a legend. It opens up a separate PDF file and it shows you information about what are the symbols on each one of the USGS map. So, because if you look at the one that I have open, it has a legend at the bottom, but there's not nearly enough space to show all the stuff that's displayed on the map. So you have that. And then the second one, that's an XML file, which is a special format file that stores metadata, that stores all the information about when this data was created, when the roads were updated, when the elevation data was updated. You can open that with a text editor, but it has a code type appearance to it, so it's hard to read stuff. That is something that if you're a little bit more advanced and you want to make sure you have the latest data, you look at that. But usually you're fine with the map itself, because for us it's just overkill. But if you're creating your own maps and overlaying different data sets from different vendors, you might want to take a look at that. But that's all integrated in that. In addition, if you go here on the right, where you have your tools, you can go to more tools and you can go to measure. And because this is a GeoPDF, what that shows now, if you go there, let me see, geospatial location, it should pop up in the lower right a window that shows you latitude and longitude on that map. So you can read out a point and then put it into your GPS if you'd like, if you want to navigate to a specific point, for instance. It also has a measuring tool, in the distance tool, so you can measure distances on the map, so you don't have to constantly refer to your scale down here. If you go to the polygon one that's here on the upper right, instead of just one, you can get you can measure your trail if you want. And here down in the lower right, it shows you the perimeter is basically the total distance of all the segments, and the distance is basically the distance of the last segment that you clicked. So you can put that on. You can leave it on there and print it out if you like. So that's all possible with this GeoPDF even before you print it. You can customize it, I guess is the main part. If you look at an older map, so this is one from, I don't know, 1970s, you don't have that layer menu here on the left because there are no layer. This is a scanned version. You can see that because it has the stamps on there when they got that map. So you don't have that. You don't have the luxury anymore. You just can print this entire map also in 22 by 29 inches if you like. So that's what I wanted to show you here. And I think we're almost at the end. The other thing I wanted to show you is, oops, sorry guys. This is the USGS map store. You go to map locator tool and you put in your Mount Bierstadt, for instance. Let's see if it finds it. Mount Bierstadt. And then you might have to zoom in a little bit more. And there's Bierstadt. And you view the product, and it will show you, well, I have the following maps that have Mount Bierstadt in them. The latest one is from 2019. You can either buy the print one for $15, as I mentioned before, or you can get the PDF. If you view more information, you'll see what year this was done. Survey data 2019, so that's pretty recent. And again, you can buy it, or you can view the PDF or download it and then look at it in Acrobat and do your own thing with it if you like. One thing I really want to show you before we close here is what's called Topo View. So Topo View is the USGS portal to access all vintages of the 7.5 minute topo grid. So if you go and view and download down here, it brings up again a map, and I can put on Bierstadt here again. And we'll zoom in and we'll find it. And then it will show me all the maps all the way back to 1903 that it has where Bierstadt's in it. Now, not all of that are those quad maps, though this one is, for instance, 1 to 62, 500. I told you the quad maps really started in the end of the 40s. So if you want to only look at the 24,000 scale, the quad map, the 7.5 minute one, you click on that filter, and it will tell you that from 1957 is the first one you have here available here. So then you can show it on the map. So this is how that looks like. You can see how that works with, you can map transparency. You can see how this fits the underlying more up-to-date data set. And you see the lakes are still there. I mean, obviously the trail up to Mount Bierstadt was not there in 1957. So you can do that. You can get some additional info. Like what's really important here is the year that was checked. So that was checked in 57, but some of the photos that were used to make that map are actually from 53. So it says 57 map, but some of the information is from 53. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. And then, as I said, you can download either JPEG, a KMZ, a GeoTIFF, or the GeoPDF that we looked at. And then you can click, oops, Can click that away. And now let's look at the most recent one, which is from 2019. If I click on that, I have the same options. I can show it. And that's the one. This one now has the trail because it's newer, of course. And you can see how that chives with the underlying map that you use to navigate there. And again, you can download it wherever you want, whatever format you have available here. If you zoom out, you can get a quick idea of how much that map covers. So that covers the Mount Evans Quadrangle map, for instance. If I click on all, you can go back to 1903, and that one covers a much, much larger area because it's 1 to 62,000. You click on show. Now you can zoom into that one. So there was a map that was created in 1903. Surprise, surprise, Bierstadt is still there because topography doesn't go away in 100 years. But other things might look quite different now. And they might be not georeferenced as correctly as the other maps because they screwed something up when they created that map. Because it's harder if you don't have GPS and satellite and drones and whatnot to make your maps. In 1903, it was a little bit harder. Well, I had a lot of fun with this. I live in Arvada. I looked at all the maps from Arvada going back to 1940 or whatever in my neighborhood and looked when the neighborhood was first designated and when the first houses came in and how the river was flowing back in 1940, Ralston Creek, as opposed to now. You can spend hours in this tool alone, but you can also grab an old map that has like mining information on it, for instance, or old lakes that are not there anymore, and you can check out what has changed when you're on your hike. So bring an old map and bring a new map, and you can make comparisons that way. All right, I think I'll stop here. Let's go back to this. And I'll leave this up for questions and answers if you have any, guys. So feel free. Let me check the chat box here if I can find it. All right. You can. I think we're having a small enough number. If you want to just chime in through audio instead of the chat, feel free to do that. And now you're all experts, and you can go out and buy all those maps. All right. I guess if there's nothing you guys want to ask or discuss. Oh, that's one from Nelson. Have you noticed contour lines in newer USGS format are rounded? And Red Rock's Amphitheater, Creation Rock, and Shiprock look like steep hills, no cliffs. A reason to check all the USGS maps. Yeah, Nelson, I think you're right on that one. The other thing I noticed is, at least when you display those newer maps on your screen, those contour lines are really fat, and the map looks really awful. I think that goes away when you print it. But it doesn't look nice when you look at where's my map? When you look at the Mount Evans from 2019, those contour lines, from my tastes, are all way too large, way too thick. But the thing is, once you zoom in, that actually goes away, and it looks much more reasonable. So yeah, I don't know why they have that, but yeah, that's definitely something. All right, anything else, folks?
So, Mike, you showed us a lot of different maps, and trying to get an idea of which maps do you prefer to use? I don't know. I guess for in general. I mean, this USGS stuff is really cool. I didn't realize that they had all that electronic info on there. Do you use USGS a lot, or do you stick with the commercial maps like SkyTerrain and Nat Geo?
It depends on what I'm doing. For a regular hike out, I usually use the Topo Map that's letter size, that only shows my my hiking trail. And then I have a map that shows the regional area. So I have either the sky terrain with me or the National Geographic Trails Illustrated map, because they have the right scale to still be able to show your trail in a zoom level that I can actually follow, and I can see trail junctions and river crossings and all that stuff. But it also has the area around me in it, in case I want to go somewhere else or I want to mark something for next time. Those are my go-to maps, like the Latitude 41. They're so zoomed out that I use those for just browsing at home if I try to find some, if I want to find some inspiration, or if I do some trip planning. If I know I go camp a few days down at Great Sand Dunes, for instance, what's available within a half-day ride that I can go to easy. So that's what I use those for. The USGS maps I use in areas where I, for instance, don't have National Geographic maps, because they don't have them covering all of Colorado yet. And I use them if I really want to, if I go into an area that has some historic component to it, and I really like a mining district, I really want, that's none of that info is on your sky terrain map or on your, and very little, just like a little symbol is on your National Geographic Trails Illustrated map. But in those old USGS maps, there's like the roads up there and then the different claims. And so it's really kind of cool. It's a little bit of exploring. It has not that much to do with navigation, but
history,
really a lot with history and exploration, because you find different things. I mean, I've a lot of times I wish I had a USGS map with me when I went somewhere and I found something like an old barn or a mining hole, and I was like wondering, well, what mine was that? Or was there like a mining town here, or was this just like an abandoned regular town? And you can find that information still if you look at the old USGS maps.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thanks very much, and keep an eye out for future talks. We have a couple in the works, and we'll let you know when those are available at the CMC website. And I will send everybody a link to the PowerPoint when we got that converted to PDF in the next couple of days. All right. Have a good night. See you next time.